we're gonna make this dialog box, okay, as well dialog. If I right click on mouse button, as you can see, how are you, I'm fine, so it's just popping out. So we're gonna make this, okay. So let's get into this. Go to hierarchy, right click or hit this plus icon, create an empty game object, name that to dialog manager, something like that, okay. Dialog manager, and go to transform of that component, right click and reset the transform. I'm gonna drag the dialog manager in the top of hierarchy so we can see it, and we're gonna select an icon, go to inspector, select any icon. I'm gonna select this one. I'm gonna move it dialog manager like this. So and go to assets, okay, right click, create C# script, name the script to something like dialog manager, and select the dialog manager game object and drag the dialog manager script to add component section of dialog manager game object, okay. So double click it to open up in Visual Studio. So before that, what we're gonna do, we're gonna make string array, basically, which will hold up multiple sentences, okay, lines. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna make an array to hold up multiple lines. We're gonna create something like 3 lines, okay, sentences. So that type will be string, okay. So what we're gonna do, and so just double click it to open up that. And we also gonna make an index, okay, index, basically line index, which will keep track of which line we are in, okay. And that type will be integer, as you know, 1 2 3 4, like that, okay. So what we're gonna go over to scripts, okay. Go over to script and we're gonna make public, okay. So we can set it inspector, so that's why we're going to make it public, and the type will be string, okay. And we have to make these square brackets for array, and we're gonna call something like sentences, which will hold up multiple line sentences. So that's why we have to use array, okay, which will hold multiple lines. And what we're gonna do, sorry, we're gonna also create an integer, okay, which we're gonna call it something like line index. Basically it will keep track of which line we are in, okay. And we're gonna make it public. So we're gonna go over to top of the script, and we're gonna make public integer, that will be line index, okay. That will be line index, something like that. By default you can set it to 0. 0 basically means the first line, as you know. And if you haven't assigned something like that, okay, so line index by default it's set up to 0, okay. By default it will pick up 0, okay. By default it will be 0 basically. So we're gonna end up with semicolon and control s on your keyboard to save this, okay. And head again to Unity, you will able to see an string array element will appear, okay, came up. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna choose 3 sentences, okay, 3 lines. So it's up to you how many lines you want to have, okay, in your dialogue. I'm gonna choose 3, and by default line index will be set to 0, okay. It will just keep track of which line we are in. As you can see, line index by default at 0. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna choose sentences. As you can see, we're gonna choose 3 sentences or 3 lines. I'm gonna choose 3. So now if I, as you can see, we have 3 text area field. As you can see, you can say the dialogue what you want to have, something like that. But as you can see, it is pretty small, okay. It is pretty, the boxes over here, it's pretty small. We're gonna make it bigger. So what we have to do, go over to script once again, in this string, okay. In this string, as you can see, we are creating the over here the array. So we're gonna specify the line. We have to use these square brackets, and we have to say text area, okay. And you can specify the minimum and the maximum line over here. So we're gonna have minimum 3 lines, and we're gonna have the 10 lines. We up to can create 3 between this, so it will create nice boxes, okay, like 3, something like that. So control s on your keyboard to save this, and head again to Unity. You will able to see this will be bigger, okay. The element over here, the boxes will be bigger, because we have chosen 3 to 10, okay, 3 to 10. So it will be bigger, and you can say something like that, okay. Just wait for to compile, and you will able to see that, okay. Control s on your keyboard to save the script, and head again to Unity, okay. Now as you can see, this become nicer. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna say what you want to say in your dialogue. So I'm gonna say something like hi, okay, hi Bhairav, something like that. This is my name, hi Bhairav Roy. and I am going to say in the next, how are you, and I am going to say I am fine, something like that. Okay, so what we're gonna do, as you can see, zero is the first line. Okay, sorry, zero is the first sentence, and zero is the first sentence. Basically, the zero index is the first sentence, and the index of the second line is one. Okay, index second line is one, and the third one index will be two. Okay, the third line index will be two. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna print out this. Okay, we're gonna print out this in the console if it's working or not. So the first line index will be 0, and the second line index will be 1, and the third line index will be 2, as you can see, 0 1 2. So we have created this line index, okay, which will keep track of which line we are in. So we're gonna firstly gonna print out this message. Okay, and then if we press some kind of button, something like that, in the keyboard, or button something like that, we're gonna go over to next line. So we have to increase this line index by 1. Okay, increment. So if this line index becomes 1, we're gonna pick up the second line. If the line index becomes 2, we're gonna pick up the third line. If the line index is 0, so we're gonna pick up the first line. As you can see, 0 is the first one, second one is the 1, okay, and third one is the 2 index, basically. So we're gonna double click it to open up the dialog manager script once again, and we're gonna do it start function. As you know, start function get call whenever the game start, and it just call one time. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna print out the first line. So what we have to do, we're gonna print out in the console. So that's why we're gonna type debug.log, and we have to pass the name of the array, which is sentences, and you have to make these square brackets, and you have to pass the index which line you want to print out. So we're gonna pass the line index. As you know, line index by default it will be 0, so it will pick up the first line. Okay, so and end up with semicolon. And what we are doing, we are calling it start function, as you can see. So what this start function doing, firstly it's printing out the first line, as you can see in the console, debug.log sentences, and we have passed the line index. By default this will be 0, as you know, so it will pick up the first line. Sentences 0 basically means the first line. Okay, so control s on your keyboard to save this, and head again to Unity. Okay, and select the console to see that message, and hit the play button. Okay, when the game start, we will able to see a high variable message will pop up in the console, because as you know, the first one index is 0, as you can see, element 0 1 2. Okay, so now if I select the console, okay, and if I hit play, as you can see, line index by default it's 0, so it will print out this message. Okay, this sentence, first sentence, as you know, we are calling that in the start function. Okay, it will pick up the first, as you can see, hi Vera Roy. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go to next line. Okay, whenever I press something like button, something like that, you can check out. Okay, so we're gonna do it update function. Okay, as you know, update function get call every single frame. Okay, that's why I'm gonna check if I pressing the right mouse button. Okay, sorry, right, if I pressing the right mouse button, then what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over to next line, but you can check for any key you want. I'm gonna check for the right mouse button. So basically we're gonna make a function for that. Okay, we're gonna make function for that, and we're gonna make it public, so we can call through buttons. Okay, I'm gonna firstly add in the UI button, which will be say something like next. If I press that next button, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over to next line. Okay, so that's why I'm gonna make that. Okay, public, and you have to type void for function, and we're gonna call something like next sentence or next line. I'm gonna call something like next line, and you have to make first bracket and this curly bracket. So what we're gonna do, we need increase this line index. Okay, by, as you know, if we increase this, so it will be 1 and 2, so the it will pick up the second one and the third one as well. Okay, so that's why we're gonna firstly we're gonna need to increase this. So what we have to do, we're gonna do it next line function. Okay, we're gonna increase line index plus equal 1, or you can say plus plus this that's also means the same thing. Okay, so we are increasing the line index. So as you know, 0 plus 1 will be 1. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna print out the second line in the console as well. Okay, so debug.log. Okay, and we have to pass the name of the array sentences, which is sentences, and we have to make square brackets, and we're gonna pass the line index. As you know, line index will be 1 if we call this function. Okay, so what this function doing, firstly it's increasing the line index by 1. As you can see, line index plus plus or plus equal 1, but that's also mean the same thing. And we are just printing out in the console sentences, and the line index become 1. As you know, 0 plus 1 will be 1 if we call the first time this next line function. So 0 plus 1 will be 1, so it will pick up also the line index over here will be 1. So sentences will pick up the second line. As you know, second line index is 1. Okay, so we also need to call this function. Okay, we also need to call this function, we never calling it. So what we gonna do, you can check for any key you want. I'm gonna check over update function. As you know, update function get called every single frame, so that's why I'm going to check every single frame if we pressing the right mouse button or not. So we're gonna do if input. Okay, input dot get mouse button down, and you have to make this first bracket, and 0 is the left one. Okay, 0 is the left one. If you pass into parenthesis 0, that means you are pressing the left one. Okay, and the 1 is the right one, so I'm gonna check for the right one. Okay, and you have to make this curly brackets. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna call this function, and okay, we're gonna call this function. So what this function we are doing, firstly it increasing by 1 index 1. As you know, line index. So 0 if we call for the first time this next line, so 0 plus 1 will be 1. So and then in the next line it's just printing in the console sentences, and we line index. Okay, line index is 1, so sentences, so it will pick up the second line. And if we call this one more time, okay, one more time, so this line index is already 1, so 1 plus 1 will be 2. So the debug.log, okay, the sentences will print out this line index will be 2, so the sentences will pick up the third one. As you know, the third one line index is 2. Okay, so now if we call this second one more time, so 2 plus 1, this will be becomes 3. But as you know, we don't have fourth line. Okay, and as you know, the fourth line will be index 3, as you know. So we don't have that line, so we will get an error message. Okay, we will get an error message if I go back to as you can see, we have three lines. Okay, 0 1 2, or three lines, and the fourth one will be the index 3. As you know, the third line index, as you can see, 2, so the fourth line index will be 3. But we don't have fourth line. Okay, so index, as you know, it will become 3, this line index will become 3. Okay, so we will get an error message. We're still trying to print out the fourth line, but as you can see, we don't have that. And the fourth line index will be 3, as you know. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna not gonna increase this line index than if we are the third line. Okay, if we are in the third line, as you know, the third line index is 2. So we're gonna check over here before we increasing the line index. We gonna check if we are already in line index, basically means line index is 2. Basically if we are in the third line, so what are we gonna do, we're not gonna increase the line index anymore. So we're gonna check if line index, okay, line index, if it's greater than or equal to, okay, sentences dot len. As you know, sentences dot len over here mean how many lines we have. As you seen, we have 3 lines, so this one becomes a sentences dot len will be 3. So what are we gonna do, so we're gonna minus 1. So 3 minus 1, as you know, 2. Okay, so the line index, if it becomes 2, so 2 is greater than or equal to 2. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna not gonna increase anymore. So what we have to type, we have to type this curly brackets we have to make, and we have to type return. Basically returns means after return this line on get call. Okay, on get call, so it will stack in the 2. Basically means the third line, it will stack in the third line. As you know, we are checking if the line index is 2. Basically a line index, as you know, in the second if we press the line index second time. Okay, this will be 2. So we are checking if the line index is already 2. Okay, if it's greater than or equal to sentences dot length minus 1. Basically, how many sentences we have? As we know, we have 3, so this sentences dot length will be 3, and 3 minus 1 will be 2. So the line index over here is 2, and if it's 2 or greater than or equal to 2, so what we are doing, we just returning. So basically means after return, this line won't get called, so the line index will stuck in the 2. Okay, because over here we're increasing, but we are not increasing whenever we are already in the third line. Basically means line index is 2, so that's why. So we also need to call this function. Okay, we're gonna call this function. So we're gonna call this function in the whenever I press the right mouse button, we're gonna call that function. So we're gonna call next line. Okay, next line, and end up with semicolon and make first bracket. So this function will firstly increase. As you can see, in it will increase. Firstly, it's gonna check if the line index is 2 or greater than or equal to 2. Firstly, so as you know, whenever I call this first time, this next line, by default line index is 0 0. So 0 plus 1 will be 1, so it will pick up the second line. As you know, the second line index is 1, so it will pick up the second one. And if we call this next line one more time, so 1 plus 1, this will be 2. Okay, so 2, so it will, so sentences over here line index is 2, so it will pick up the third line. But when we are pressing the one more time, so as you know, this is already 2, and we are checking if already 2 is greater than or equal to over here, so we just returning, we're not increasing the line index anymore, as you can see. So it will stuck in the 2. Okay, so control s on your keyboard to save this and head again to Unity. You will able to see we will stuck in the third line. Okay, whenever I press the right mouse button, we will stuck in that line because we are not increasing anymore whenever the line index already become 2. Basically with 3 lines. Okay, so now if I hit play, okay, in this start we printing out this message. As you know, we are debugging. So 0 is the first one, 1 is the second, and the third one is the 2, basically the index. Okay, as you can see, hi Bhairav project get print out. Now if I press the next right mouse button, we are calling the next line. Okay, function. As you can see, how are you, and if I press one more time, this line index will be 2, so we will pick up, so sentence will pick up the third line. As you know, the third line index is 2. Now if I press one more time, it's stuck in the 2. As you can see, it's not increasing anymore, so we are checking that before we printing out the message. Okay, we are checking, and if the line index already 2, we just returning. Okay, basically means after return its own get call, the line own get call. So what we gonna do, instead of printing out the message over here, we're gonna print out in the UI. Okay, we're gonna print out in the UI. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna firstly need to create the canvas to show in the text. Okay, so what we need to do, go to hierarchy, right click, create, go to UI, and then select the canvas, and select the canvas, select a constant pixel size to scale with the screen size, so it will scale with screen size. Okay, and what we're gonna do, select resolution in the X 1920, in the Y 1080. Okay, so right click on canvas, go to UI, and we're gonna make an panel. Okay, make an panel. So if to focus on. Okay, and select this rect tool. I'm gonna move it something like and hold down alt on your keyboard, so it will resize from the center. Okay, I'm gonna move it this over here, something like this. I guess it's fine. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna make the transparency little bit. Okay, so go to color fill and select the bottom one, increase that little bit. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna set this pennant. I'm gonna call it something like dialog box. Okay, dialog box, something like that, dialog box. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna make the text area. So I'm gonna so go to rect transform of this dialog box of the panel or the panel, and hold down alt on your keyboard and select this one, so it will resize all the time in the bottom. Okay, with the screen, as you can see. So that's the reason selecting that. So what we're gonna do, sorry for that. We're gonna show we're gonna create the text. Okay, we're gonna create, so right click on dialog box and go to UI and select legacy, then text. Okay, and we're gonna select the text and go to rect transform and select this one and hold down all on your keyboard and select that sorry, bottom left right one. So select that. Okay, so it will stretch, the text area will stretch with this panel. Okay, so I'm gonna make the font size little bit higher, something like that. Okay, I'm gonna move it so what we're gonna do, we're gonna move it something like, I'm gonna make the color white, totally white. Okay, totally white. I'm gonna make the font size little bit higher. I'm gonna select font style to bold. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna show up the over here message. So we need this text element, then we can set this, as you can see we can set anything like that. Okay, by default let's say hi, something like that I'm gonna call, or it's something like that. So we need this text element. Okay, we need this text element. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over to dialog manager and we're gonna create a text area. Then what we're gonna do, we're gonna drag that text into that text field, so we will have link of the text. Now then we're gonna change this one to our dialog. As you can see, we're gonna print out this. Okay, so what we need to go to dialog manager script once again. If you want to create the text component, you have to include the namespaces using unity engine.ui, because the text element, as you know, this is an UI element, so that's why we're gonna you have to use this using unity engine.ui. Okay, UI. And we're gonna, what we're gonna do, we're gonna make it public. Okay, so we're gonna go top of the class and we're gonna make public. That type will be text. Okay, that type will be text, and we're gonna gonna call something like dialog text. Okay, dialog txt, something like that. By default it will be empty. So what we need, we need to drag that text. As you seen, we need to drag this text to this dialog text, so we will have the link up. So control s on your keyboard to save this. Okay, we made it public, so we will able to see in the top over here. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna drag this text to that text field. Okay, we're gonna drag this text to text field. Just wait for to compile and you will able to see. Okay, so as you can see, text which is empty, dialog text which is says none. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna drag this text to that text field. Now we have the link up of this text. Now we can change this. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over to start. Okay, instead of printing out the console, what we're gonna do, we're gonna print out in the we're gonna print out in the text area. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna go to dialog text. Okay, dialog text dot text, we basically we are going to this text. Okay, this text, and then we are accessing this one. So we're gonna set equal to. Okay, equal to our sentences. Okay, sentences, and we're gonna pass the line index. Okay, line index. So as you know, so the dialog text over here will be hi Bhairav Roy. Basically we are picking the first one, we are calling it a start function, as you can see. And dialog text dot text, basically it's equal to sentences, and as you know, line index by default it will be 0. So it will pick up the first line, hi Bhairav Roy. Basically this one it will pick up. Okay, if I go to dialog manager, so it will be, so the text over here will be equal to this one. Okay, hi Bhairav Roy, because we directly setting it. So what we're gonna do, control s on your keyboard to save this and head again to unity. You will able to see whenever we start the game, hi Bhairav Roy will pop up over here. Okay, in the text, this text will be that. Okay, so just wait for to compile and you will able to see that. Now if I hit play, okay, this hi Bhairav Roy will be this text. Okay, because we directly setting it equal to, okay, dialog text dot text equal to sentences, and it will pick up the, as you know, it will pick up the, as you can see, hi Bhairav Roy. So whenever I press the right mouse button, okay, as you can see, hi are you, or we also need to print out that in the over here. So okay, we're gonna print out that over here. okay, before, so we're gonna print out this hi, how are you also over here, and the I am fine also over there. So what we need, firstly we need to delete that. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over to next line. Okay, before we printing out the second line, we need to clear the first line. Okay, we need to erase the first line. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over to over here, and we're gonna say dialog text dot text equal to, okay, equal to empty. Okay, empty, basically this will be empty, and string. Okay, string. So this will be empty. So what we're gonna do in the next, we're gonna do dialog text. Okay, dialog text dot text equal to, firstly we clearing that. Okay, we clearing that, and then what we're gonna do, we're gonna do sentences, and we're gonna pass the line index, so it will print out the second line. Okay, so line index, as you know, it will be 1 for the first time. Okay, line index by default it's 0, so 0 plus 1 will be 1. So line index over here will be 1, so sentence will pick up the second line, second line index 1, as you know. So dialog text dot text over here will be the second line. Okay, sentence will pick up the second line. Before that we just setting to null, as you can see. Okay, before we printing out the second line, we saying dialog text dot text equal to this empty string, basically we clearing out. Okay, so control s, and then we are setting it to second line. Okay, so control s on your keyboard to save this, and head again to unity. Okay, just wait for to compile, and you will able to see that. Okay, just wait for to compile. Just wait for to compile, and now if I hit play, okay, if I hit play, you will able to see that. Okay, just wait for to compile. As you can see, the first high variable printing out, because if we go to start function, as you can see, dialog text dot text equal to sentences, and line index, as you know, by default it will be 0, so sentence will pick up the first line. As you know, first line index is 0. Now if I press the right mouse button, as you can see, hi, how are you. Okay, firstly it's we are calling this function. Okay, so what this function doing, firstly we are setting text to empty string. As you can see, firstly we clearing out what we have said. Okay, and then what we are doing, we increasing the line index by 1. So dialog sentence over here will pick up the second line, as you know. So 0 plus 1 will be 1, so it will pick up the second line. But if we call for the third time, basically next time, once again, so 1 plus 1 will be 2, so a dialog text dot text over here will be the third line. So sentence will pick up the so the line index over here will be 2, so that's why sentence will pick up the third line. Okay, third line index is 2, as you know, we are calling it over here. In the next video we're gonna animate this. Okay, we're gonna animate this. As you can see, whenever I press, it's stuck, we saying. Now it's not printing out because line index is stuck in the 2, we said that. Okay, so in the next video we're gonna animate the text element. Okay, and we're gonna animate the panel also. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then like this video, and if you are new to my channel, then subscribe it for upcoming tutorials. Okay, and if you want to support me, you can support me on patreon.com. Okay, and share it with your friends this video. Okay, who want to learn unity from the beginning, and making want to make the dialogue system. Okay, and okay.